Hey y'all, welcome back to Ascending with Ashley. I'm Ashley. Um, this is a story time. I want to talk about what it's like to be an undiagnosed autistic person, and then be self-diagnosed as an adult when you become a parent of an autistic child. So I'm 37 now, and I am self-diagnosed because of my research about Nile. I think this is a big conversation on TikTok, but this is my space. I like this space better than TikTok, so I'm sharing over here. There's a lot of folks who have talked about it over there on TikTok if you'd like other people's experiences, I guess. But I think the one thing that I want to talk about is how, and I've mentioned this many times before, is how many times I was misdiagnosed and over-medicated, and I was never ever thought to be autistic. Now here's the thing, the system doesn't really like to diagnose women or girls, young girls with autism, and I think that sucks. Because like everything I experienced, so like the life-changing year for me was 2009. That's when I got locked up, and that's when I had my first autistic burnout, but it was seen as a manic episode, which is fair, sort of. Ow, hang on, I need to... It's not fair. It's not fair. It wasn't fair. Because I went my whole life. I was 23 at that point, maybe 22. So it had already been that many years of me being an autistic person without anybody knowing. I also think that there is a correlation. So I'm going to footnote this, and then I'll get back to the storytelling, and then we'll get back to this thought. Because they're like a human post-it. I think there's a correlation to spiritual gifts and autism as well. But I'll talk more about that. Because that's kind of my whole gist of the way that mental illness shows up for folks, is that it tends to be spiritual gifts masking as inadequate behavior for society, right? So a little bit about my experience. I hope that whoever's watching this can grasp the concept of having spiritual gifts, psychic gifts, and also having autism. I don't think that there's a bridge there for the most part. I feel like those of us who have made that bridge are a very small number of people. But again, it is a conversation over on TikTok. I believe all mental illness is a root of some spiritual gifts. I believe that humans have access to higher realms through their own bodies. Why? Because I myself have experienced this. When I was working with a team of healers back in was I pregnant? It was right before I got pregnant. They like supported the pregnancy. So it was 2018. The end of 2018. I was like hanging out with a group of healers, very powerful healers, elders. Like Niall was conceived in, well, he wasn't conceived, but Niall's ability to be here was because of a sweat lodge that I was doing with these folks. They were elders. They are elders. And anyway, I said to them, I believe that everyone has these gifts. And they looked at me and they said, no, not everybody has these gifts. But I still believe, it's hard for me to believe that my experience is so unique because it's been so painful to come into. I believe everybody has access to these gifts. It's just a matter of whether or not we utilize that access. Now let's get back to autism. Autism. I'm using the language because because of the pathology that exists with it, right? Like Niall and I have a pretty telepathic communication system going on, which is why I don't really trip about him being nonverbal, you know? I'm a communication bachelor's major, and we took an entire course on nonverbal communication, all about body language and other things. And yeah, that was back in the early 2000s, but I remember. So the link there is that a lot of spiritual gifts are telepathic, right? Clairvoyance, claircognizance, what are the other ones? I don't know. I have them in my workbook for the esoteric course. I have at least 4 clair abilities, which I don't usually talk about in this way, but I believe that that is a part of autism. I believe that we are labeled autistic, but these are spiritual abilities. So anyway, my clair abilities, I'm claircognizant, I'm clairvoyant, and I'm audient? Audient? No, that's not the word for it. That's clairvoyant. And I don't know. I'm a few of the clairs. My brain works apparently very differently than others. And now that I'm starting to understand autism, that's why I feel okay identifying with that. Like, I never felt comfortable. When they told me I was bipolar, I was like, I'm a Pisces, right? So, like, Pisces are, like, symbolized by 2 fish, right? Like, one dark and one light. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'm bipolar. Like, so are you. Like, everybody should be able to access the spectrum of emotions. You want us to just be, like, monotone the entire time? Like, it never made sense from my experience when they labeled me with all of these things. Mom, we gotta deliver these pancakes. I've been labeled schizophrenic. Here's your pancakes. Bacon's coming, honey. I've been labeled psychotic, like literally in a medical setting. But like, I think some of the characteristics of autism that I really resonate with are like, I can go hours without speaking. I really like enjoy speaking, but I'm also never heard. You know what I mean? Like, I don't really think there's anyone in my life that I've ever felt understood by, like, all the way, you know? And that's really, really, really isolating, and it causes a lot of issues communicating and connecting with humans. So, like, we stay in our own lane, me and my son, and then, you know, we create things because my brain, I'm a very creative person, but I also have ADHD. But I believe, I don't see these as bad qualities, right? I see these as, again, magical human qualities. I have I'm like one of those masters of none, jacks of all trade kind of people. Like, if I want to learn something, I learn it. And I guess that's not normal either. But as we remember, if you were here for me when I was revisiting my old journal entries, I wrote a lot in my early teens about normalcy being a nothing. And I was medicated at that time. I started taking antidepressants at that time, and I was taking Adderall for ADHD, which is essentially speed. So this is pretty much the first time in my life since 13, 14. Well, not the first time because it's been a while. I haven't been medicated or on any sort of medicine for about 10 years. Well, there was a tiny blip in 2017 when people were trying to make me relapse, and they were forcing medication on me, but I went off of it. I'm resistant because I had lost all my abilities the first time. But as a young child, I remember always seeing things that people couldn't see. Were they hallucinations? No. Again, they were extra abilities. And that's why I brought up watching the movie Divergent the other day, because I felt a kinship with Tris, because I don't fit in any boxes either, and my whole life people have tried to keep me in boxes. So I'm finally like accepting the autism box. But I also know, because of my experience, like a lot of people see autism as a disability behaviorally. I don't. I know that I think it's great for, like, if we're in a setting with other people, I am always automatically tell people that Niall's autistic. And I do this because it allows him a little more wiggle room to be himself. Because I don't want to police his behavior. I want him to be able to be free in who he is, in his expression. And I always let people know, like every time we do art space, when we have new folks, I say, my son's autistic, he's going to be doing this, he might do this, he might do this. It's all part of autism. And that gives that space of understanding, which I never had growing up. I still don't have. Like from anyone else. I've created that space for myself now. But again, I know that he has special abilities. See things, hear things. I don't think that those are hallucinations. I think that those are powers. And I've had that feeling for years. Based on my own experience and the experiences of hundreds of people that I've worked with, met with in the institutions. And I don't think when we started going to this health center that we started going to a couple weeks ago for his assessment, on his initial paperwork, I made it known that I was not seeking any medication, just supportive therapies. And I think that's, I don't feel like autism is something that you can medicate or therapy away. I'm in more of this area of, you just have to support who they are, who we are, you know. Yesterday, someone commented on that. So there was a TikTok that I commented on that someone made about how the DSM has legal ramifications, and I was like, yeah, it's like criminalizing people who aren't normal, right? Who have abilities, and most of that stems from trauma, of being misunderstood, right? Of having, whether it's abilities or behaviors or emotions that other people just don't want to deal with, and then you just get stamped with a label, fucking medicated out of your ass. So anyway, my experience has been incredibly isolating. I don't have a good group of friends. I've had good friends in, you know, certain seasons of my life, a few who have come through in lots of different seasons, but ultimately I don't. And now that, you know, I cut my mom off because she was always just dedicated to misunderstanding me, and she was always going to try and play the victim in my situation. She was always going to look at me like something is wrong, you know. I am 37 years old. I don't have any capacity for anyone in my life. I don't care what your relationship is to me. I have no capacity for anyone to look at me like that. And it's absolutely zero. There's no negotiating on that. If you don't respect who I literally am as a person, you have no right to be in my life. If you're always going to try and tell me I'm mentally ill when you yourself can, you know, hardly make two thoughts put together, I'm good. I'm good. I want to talk a little bit about how my brain functions. I have visual capabilities. This is another conversation on TikTok. This is why I feel comfortable telling this. These are the things that they tried to medicate out of me. Again, why I think you should watch the movie Divergent. It's very real. And again, when we watch fiction and we put it on real life, it's like, oh wow. I had a very, very similar experience. I was overly medicated. You know, when I first had my moment in 2019, it was because I had a little bit of Peter Pan syndrome. And I'm like, I don't want to graduate. I was like 2 months out, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know, it was too much pressure. And it was autistic burnout, and it was like I had finally found something I wanted to do. I wanted to go to an orphanage in Africa. And of course, everyone around me was like, that's unrealistic, what the fuck? And I'm like, well, I don't want to do anything else. I want to be around kids. I want to play, you know. I want to smoke weed and hang out. You know, I don't want to go to corporate America that has, you know, and I feel like most of us who are any sort of in touch with our humanity are like, that's incredibly unfulfilling, right? Because it is. Because it goes against our human condition to want to connect, create, commune, you know what I mean? You know, the rat race is not conducive to the human soul. It's just truth. So, anyway, my experience has been lonely. But I feel like within that loneliness, I think last night I had a really big, like, aha moment. Because when I go out into the world, I get stared at all the time. And because of my trauma, I'm like, why are people looking at me? But then I realized last night that they're looking at me because of my aura. And I don't know whether or not they can see it, but I have a very large aura. Your aura is your energy around you, around your physical body, both within you and around you. And because I have healed from things that I've healed from. I gotta turn these lights on, but I'll do that in a minute. You're good, huh? I'll get you medicine. My aura is like extra big, and so but also with that, and this is on a spiritual level, and I know a lot of people aren't gonna be able to grasp this because religion is a thing and people just don't believe in this shit. Which is weird, because it's, like, in all of the fucking books. The first download I got back in 2009 was this. And this. And it was like, this is the sacred space. And these are the 7 deadly sins, right? And then if you... it like goes on your womb, like that can be the womb. But I always said when I got this download was like, this space is a sacred space, and that's like where all religious texts came from, you know, like there was some sort of creation piece. And then there's also the triangle, which turned into pyramids, which the Illuminati use as like a symbol of whatever they do. Because everything on this planet ultimately boils down to a good versus evil, right? I believe folks with autism are some of the most innocent and vulnerable people on the planet. And I take it I'm very careful about what labels we use, because of my academic studies, because of my own experiences. Because I know certain labels will land you in certain spaces. Talking jails, institutions, prisons, court, you know. Whereas other labels will offer more support and understanding. And that's really an important way to navigate the world. So yeah. I think that when I am around other people, I get incredibly exhausted. I'm incredibly empathetic. I'm very sensitive. I think that has to do with autism. And also spiritual just gifts and abilities. I am an incredibly sensitive. I mean, I can read people's energy. I can read their minds if I want to. I really just try to stay in my own bubble. But sometimes it's unavoidable, and I am like a sponge, like an energetic sponge, which I feel like a lot of autistic people are, because we require so much time to recharge. So again, I think it depends on the labels. Oh, I'm gonna run out of time soon. But like, autism is, I believe, a human word for something extraordinary to human experience. And there's other words. Remember, clairvoyant, the clair abilities. It took me a long time to recognize that my clair abilities. So like, when I was labeled psychotic and shit, it was because I was having hallucinations and delusions and hearing stuff. I'm not saying that those things aren't real, but I'm saying if you have the right person to work with, you can, I mean, I've done it. That stuff was really negative to me. It was really painful, traumatic, and I figured out a way to be able to access my gifts without it being labeled a mental illness. So if you want to work with me, let me know. I'm available. There are cheat codes to this shit, quite frankly. And it's my autistic special interest. So I've spent a lot of years perfecting these things, so that I don't ever experience, and my son doesn't ever experience, what I went through at one point. Because locking people away, medicating their originality out of them, and forcing them to sit behind a computer screen are not conducive to who they are as humans, as people. And again, I truly, truly, truly believe we all have these abilities. It's just a matter of connecting to ourselves, figuring it out, and learning how to utilize them. And that is a process that is constant. You can always get better at something, right? It takes practice. Okay, I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for being here. Have a good one.